Okay, so I actually forgot there was one more architectural term, actually maybe a few more, that you might need to know. I mean, you still need to know like Basilica, Transept, Nave, but those terms are kind of like generalized. Um, and I kind of want to use like an actual like figure or image or kind of plan to show you what they look like. But another one is the quatrefoil, and so the quatrefoil is just this like clover flower shaped, it's just a shape that's like in four lobes. It's like flower like, and you see that in architectural tracery, and you see that a lot with Gothic architecture. So the reason this is important is because you see it within like Giberti's and Brunelleschi's piece when they were competing against doing the doors of the Florence Baptistery, the east doors, I believe, and it's just an architectural term that is just kind of floating in the air, and you're like, oh, what is that? So now you know. And the predella is a space where a painting or sculpture is placed. So like if you look at the Trinity, I mean that's another term. Really, predella has a lot of multiple terms, but with the predella, it's that like little level, like beneath an altar, where a sculpture or a painting is placed. And in the Trinity, it's below the patrons, the praying patrons, and you see this little space. And you see, I believe it's Memento Mori. You see it on there, and you see a lot of that in altarpieces and even within Greek art, you see a lot of predellas, like where there's like sculptures of figures, whether it's pagan or Christian, you see that a lot. But that's a generalized term too, so you're going to probably see that a lot in later works. And if you haven't taken art history 1, you're going to see that a lot too. Okay, now we're going to get to the big part, and that's Neoplatonism. And this, I cannot emphasize, is really important to know. There's really no direct like translation. It's a concept. It's a philosophy. It's a philosophy based off of Platonic thought in Greek times, and so it's a philosophy of the revival of like classical antiquity, which means like mythical figures or classical thought. But they use that to further like emphasize their ideas of Christianity. So just combine the ideas of Christianity in the classical world. You're going to see that a lot with Botticelli. Botticelli, we talked infinitely about Neoplatonism, where he would paint these figures. I mean, granted, he almost burned all his like Neoplatonist paintings, and he kind of went berserk. I guess, I don't know. And but anyway, so with Botticelli's work, you see a lot of like the birth of Venus, and a lot of people are like, well, what's going on? Like, isn't that weird? Like, weren't they at a time where that was kind of like blasphemy to be painting something that's pagan related, and Venus is pagan related, obviously. Well, the reason they did that is they wanted to use it to their advantage to further emphasize, like, hey, without this, we wouldn't have this. Without, pagan thought, we wouldn't have been able to go to Christianity. So they kind of, like, took things out and used it for their advantage. So, like, one thing I really like about The Birth of Venus is it really talks about the virgin whore dichotomy, because a lot of people were like, how can you relate the Virgin Mary to Venus? And a lot of people, since Venus was the embodiment of erotic love and romantic love and stuff, and the Virgin Mary is the symbol of purity, and so I thought that was kind of interesting how they kind of played it in on that. I know it's a little bit confusing, but you see that a lot with Renaissance art, and then you see that a lot with like Raphael's School of Athens, where he literally took pagan-like figures like Plato and Aristotle, and if you look in the back of the architecture, you see that like on the left is Apollo and on the right is Athena, and these are pagan figures, but they represent art. They represent, like, Apollo is the god of art, and then Athena is the goddess of mechanical arts, like weaponry and stuff like that. But it just emphasized that Neoplatonic thought that says pretty much without these classical thoughts, we wouldn't have gone this far. We wouldn't have had Christianity. And so it really goes back to the Renaissance, where they were trying to look in the past and get influence from the past in order to create something more original and better. Neoplatonism doesn't necessarily invent anything, but it's just supporting Christianity through pagan laws and pagan concepts. So that's a really, really huge thing you need to know about. And that's kind of in a lot of paintings, but just Botticelli is really prevalent in that, and Raphael's pieces towards the High Renaissance, you're going to see a lot of that as well. So I know I mentioned fresco before with oil painting, but I just want to kind of repeat again the characteristics of fresco. So fresco's color pigments that are mixed solely with water. And so it's water-based. And you paint on plaster, like just on plaster, on a wall, like directly on a wall. And there's certain methods. There's wet fresco versus dry fresco. I don't think Dr. Saylor really cares if you know the Italian terms, but I'll put it down anyways if you guys want to know. But the reason we need to know this is just we need to know how the methods work. So like Leonardo's The Last Supper, if you notice, like in the lectures, if you guys went to class that day, you notice that there's some parts where it was like chipping off, and that's because he used like the dry fresco method, where he just painted on dry, and that was probably his worst idea ever. Like he was a brilliant man, but that was probably his worst idea ever, was that he used dry fresco, and it didn't last long, and he actually had to reapply it while he was still alive. So it's kind of uncertain how much of that work is original, because it's just been rendered and reapplied so many times that you don't know, amongst being, bombed and all that fun stuff. So, just so you know, that's kind of why you need to know those two different methods. Just know that wet fresco is on wet plaster, dry fresco on dry plaster, and know the difference. I mean, it's generally kind of pretty basic. I know I mentioned Memento Mori, but I want to kind of go more into that. You see that a lot with Masaccio's Trinity, and it's kind of, it literally means like the remembrance of death. Mori meaning death, and memento meaning like remembrance, or just remember back, or think, like, and it just goes back to this type of genre of artwork where the idea is to have that person looking at it realize their mortality, that they're going to die soon, and to repent for their sins. I mean, it's kind of a nasty message, but it's really, like, you see that a lot. But the main works you see it is like in the Trinity, where you see like Adam's skull, and then you see like Memento Mori, and then you see that phrase, like, I think it's like, here I am, and you'll become me, or, I'm just paraphrasing here, but it's just pretty much going back to your mortality, and you need to behave, or else you're gonna, go to hell. It's kind of a very, like, really depressing message, but it's there, so that's what Memento Mori it's about. It's another concept. Okay, so Giorante, or Giornata, I don't know if I said that right, but if I ever, like, mispronounce something, I'll put the terms down below so you guys know what they are without me butchering them. It literally means a day's work, and this is just an idea of like how long an artist took on a painting or a fresco. And so it's used for both, like, mostly for like wet fresco material. And it was just like describing a single day of painting. And so you're going to see that a lot in the Expulsion from Masaccio. He did that in wet fresco, and so that's where that term came from. So just know that term relates to the Expulsion piece by Masaccio. Camera Picta is actually, it's one of the art pieces that you're going to have to know for the test. This was made by Mantegna, and it was commissioned by actually the Gonzanga family, which I mentioned in my earlier video. And so what this is, it's literally the picture room. And this is just a room that Mantegna was commissioned to paint. But you just need to know what that term means and why that's prevalent or important. So I think that's kind of easy because that's actually the name of a piece. So not only will you know a term, you'll know a piece of a work, which is, I think, just dandy. In addition to that, you're going to know putti or puto. It's literally like fat angel babies. It's P-U-T-T-I, and they're like little baby cupids. They're not cupids, they're like fat angel babies. But you see that in camera Picta, where Mantegna like puts those babies like the peeing baby in like that up in the ceiling. That's just a general term. It's just a little fat angel baby that's naked. So you'll see that a lot in Baroque too, like Baroque pieces. I think Rococo uses a lot of that too. Just the pretty. Okay, so Di sotto in su is literally the translation is seen from below. It's a tradition in Renaissance, Rococo, and Baroque art. But in terms of Rococo, the camera Picta is really prevalent. It's where like they use that illusion, that three-dimensional illusion, to kind of like make that ceiling look three-dimensional, like you're looking up, literally. And then it also correlates to that Renaissance window. So just know that's the literal translation, Di sotto in su, seen from below. And know that parallels to camera Picta. So I already mentioned wet fresco and blanc fresco. The last term I'm going to do for this this vlog is going to be primavera, and that's pretty general. It literally means spring. And again, that's another piece you're going to have to know by Botticelli. And I've also heard the piece be called Allegory of Spring, but just know it just relates to spring and the idea of spring. And then that relates to Neoplatonic thought. And the really interesting thing is most of these terms, like a lot of them like cross-web each other. They correlate with one another. So it's not going to be hard to know about these terms. If you guys have any questions, just let me know during the review, and we can go from there. And so just let me know if I can improve on the vlog. You can email me. You have my email, or you can leave comments. I'm sorry I couldn't leave any pictures. It's a copyright issue, but I'm going to see how I can figure that out to where I can get some visual aid in. This is sort of experimental, but for now, I guess we'll just see how this goes. And like I said, if you guys have any questions about the terms, just let me know. Okay?